Hello guys, and welcome back to another Satisfactory guide, and today we're going to be talking about Satisfactory factory design. Because let's face it, with Satisfactory being a sandbox, there are all different types of factories that you can build. From spaghetti factories, to box factories, open layout factories. We have segmented factories, as well as more industrial inspired factories. In fact, you could argue there's as many different types of factories as there are creatures in the game. Speaking of which, Heroic Replicas, who brought to life the doggo as well as the coffee cup and Xenobasher, are now starting a new Kickstarter campaign which will bring to life these two creatures, as well as the build gun and a mechanical pen for us to use. So if you do want to support them, do check out the link to the Kickstarter below. And to celebrate this, Heroic Replicas are also putting on a discount on their current store goods, which means you can get 15% off your coffee cups at the moment, as well as I believe the t-shirts and all the plushes that they have in the store. You can also get 50% off the keychains, which I use for my house keys, both here and in the UK, as well as the sticker packs. And finally, you can get 20% off their real life replicas. So that's the Xenobasher and the Xenozapper. So if you do want to grab yourself a bargain, why not check out the link to the Doggo store below and get yourself one of these. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get back to the video. My intention with this video is to help you decorate your factories like a pro. Well, perhaps not a pro, but we are going to help you turn something like this, or even a box factory like this, into something a little bit more pleasant on the eyes. But before we do get started, I just want to say, you can play the game how you want. Don't feel that this is the way that you have to do it. Be creative, play around with some of the things that I've suggested, and see what you can come up with, or don't. It's your choice. When it comes to building factories in this game, we all start off with a bit of spaghetti, even if that's just your miners or if it's your first time playing, or perhaps you choose to play that way. But it's quite easy to see the process from there goes to, generally speaking, an open factory like this. And you can see it is a lot more organized than what spaghetti is, and it's a lot more cleaner as well. And it's pretty common from here to cover this in walls. And here we are, we have our first box factory. There are two problems with this. Firstly, it looks boring. And then the second issue is that if you go inside the factory, generally speaking, we're having to jump across the mergers or the splitters or climb up on top of the machines in order to get anywhere. Sure, the factory is functional, but at this point, we really want to change the decoration, both for functionality within the factory, but also for the sake of decoration and making it aesthetically pleasing, whether that's on the inside or the outside, which is what we're going to start off with here. I have covered decoration many times before in my videos, so I will put a link to some in the top right hand corner now in terms of the exterior of a build, but I will just very quickly talk about some of the basic or most important tips for decorating on the outside. If you want to change its look, you have to change the texture, and you also have to play around with the depth as well. Here we have a very boring wall, and it's all on one depth of field, I guess. So we're going to, I don't know, place these on the outer section here, and then we'll also grab our larger pillars, and you can see how this breaks it up a little bit, but you can continue to do this more. As you can see, all I did was continue what we had laid out first with the two small pillars, then the two larger ones either side, and then this in the middle, this inverted slope, and then we changed the material to the coated one, but it's still not done yet. Let's move on to the wall. Now at this point we want to play around with the borders, and so what we can do with this, let's change the color slightly. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is play around with the materials here. Now we have the glass walls. I'm also going to snap inside some inverted ramps to give it this more sci-fi window, I guess. From here, what we're going to play around with is on this top section, we're going to break it up again. We'll keep with the white line first, then we're going to do another one. In fact, if we just change it to this one, let's play around with the green color, shall we? Maybe a gray on top of that, and we'll go back to white. So we've used the color to break up the monotony. We could also play around with the wall. Perhaps we could have a lower section that is made out of concrete, and then from here maybe we want to add a little bit more depth using the beams. So if we're going for something a little bit more industrial, perhaps we want to use these iron girders, and we can use them to mark various parts of the build. You can see that we've already greatly changed this, but we can do more. This is looking a little bit odd. And so what I recommend is adding more depth over these. We're just building on top of what we've got, but you have to be careful. You can build too much and it can take away from the build, but you have to play around with it to get to that point. And you have to be also not afraid to go too far and then delete the stuff if it doesn't look great. Here, I think we'll add a little bit of an overhang. We can also change the materials. And then from here, what if we add maybe some beams shooting out in this direction? And then I think we'll probably place this painted beam around the whole of the outer build. The last thing that I want to do at this point is add a few signs. Now you do have to be careful with this because there are a lot of problems with having too many signs in your save at the moment. And all I'm going to do here is give it a suggestion that this is the entrance by painting these signs. And to do that, all we're going to do is delete these, set the emission strength to 2 or 3, and we're going to change the background color. Perhaps let's try silver, but we can obviously play around with that. There you go, some tips that I'd recommend just to spruce up the outer decoration of your box factories. But now let's get into let's get inside the factories. When it comes to the inside of the factory, the number one thing for me is to have space for me to walk around, because I don't tend to use the hover pack that much unless I'm building. That means I either want to see dedicated floor space for walking around the factory, or I want to have dedicated walkways. The only other option in my mind is to change the way we do our logistics. Whether that means having manifolds that are lifted above the ground so that we can walk through, or we make use of logistic floors which allow us to bring the items up from below or above. This one, for example, is just below our storage area, which I think looks pretty clean, keeping all of the unnecessary stuff away from the factory floor. By the way, if you do like this build, do check out my Let's Play episode on this. We actually cover how we built it, and it is a blueprint as well that is available to everyone. I'll put a link to that video in the top right hand corner now. Anyway, I want to show you the various styles that both I use and also things that I would potentially recommend when you come to building your factories. For example, this is one of my early factories, and you can see what we've done here is play around with the resources being brought on the main floor where they're fed into the machines, but we have a walkway above all of this, keeping it nice and clean. Then we make use of the loading floors to take the resources up to the next level. We've also tried to make this look a little more industrial by using the barriers as a different texture to break up the monotony. And we've also enclosed the elevators with the framed pillars as well to make it feel a little bit more heavy duty. Coming away from the clean open factory approach that we've just done, where you can freely go about the builds, we have a more minimal approach, I want to say. This kind of reminds me of an electronics factory where every buildable is within its own segregated section. Now you can go in and check them out, but all you want to have are the buildables and then the elevators taking them up. Everything is neatly hidden. You make use of the signs so that you know what's going on without you needing to go in. And then you also play about with the lighting. Here you can see we've reduced the amount of light that's being shown by placing down these beams. So you just need to make sure that you don't cover the center section, and you can use that to reduce the amount of light that's being cast down. With this type of factory, you still have your logistic floors going on either above or below, but the idea is you minimize anything that's not needed here. And yes, we are just using a basic wall here. I just wanted to show you the inside rather than decorate the outside. With this kind of electronic factory style that we have going, one thing that I really like to do is to add a conveyor belt just across the front of the windows. Here you can kind of quality check the items that have been produced. And then of course we do have the barriers which lend more towards the industrial side of things, but I think it blends in quite well here. This is probably the easiest style of factory to replicate. All we're doing is making sure that we've got enough space in between our buildables. So you see we have our assemblers here and our constructors here, and we're going to build a glass wall around all of them with the exception of the entrance. The entrance is marked with a doorway and sign and uses a solid wall, and then we also have a barrier on each of the corners. And you can see we've also used a pillar along the left-hand side of this doorway to break apart the glass section from the solid wall. Otherwise it looks a little odd. And as I mentioned earlier, using the signs to create a little bit of a light reflection there so that we know this is the entrance area. The roof here is simple enough to produce. We've just created a sloped glass roof over each of the areas that are producing the resources. So each of the segregated sections have the glass roofs in it to make sure there's plenty of natural light reaching the factory. And the last thing that I really need to talk about this is the use of floors. To give this factory a feel that it's using clean rooms, what we've done is we have a concrete floor along the outside, but on the inside we're using the coated plastic floors to make it look squeaky clean. That's what I'd recommend if you're going for this look, and obviously you want to make sure that all of the wires are kept out of the way. You can see we brought them to the floor below, but you could easily do this with a pillar along the top as well. Now the next one that I want to talk about is the industrial feel. For the more industrial build, we've gone for a rectangular shaped building. This gives it more of a feeling of being a warehouse. With this being a little bit more simple, we have been careful with the materials that we've used. We've gone with concrete quite a bit. We've also made sure to use a lot more iron beams. Those iron girders definitely give it a more industrial feel, along with the corrugated aluminium roof. For the lower section, we have made it a lot more structured as well. We've gone for the pillars supporting the inverted ramps, and then we've also got the half foundations back there to give it a lot more depth as well. And we've used the glass a little bit more sparingly in this build. If we go to the inside, you'll notice a couple of things. First off, we have pipes running along the top. We don't actually need the pipes for this build, but I do feel that it can add a little bit of an interesting aesthetic, even if you don't need to use them. So that's why we've done that there. Where possible, I think it feels appropriate at least to use the hanging conveyors. And we've also made sure that the areas are cordoned off because we don't want any industrial accidents. When it comes to the logistics of this, we've made sure that the hanging conveyors that we're using are also encased with this more framed structure using the framed pillars. And we've also done this with the elevators as well. When it comes to the splitting of resources, we could do this on the floor, and we have done this for various sections, but in the main, we do make sure that we do all of that above the factory floor so that we're not needing to walk into that. I've also made use of plenty of walkways so that we can get above the flooring, and any areas where there are resources passing through, we have cordoned off. And another thing to mention is the use of the vinyl floor designs. What I've tried to do is to make sure that there is a warning line wherever there is the constructors or the smelters running, just to make sure that our pioneers are safe, because, you know, Fixit do care about their pioneers, right? But guys, we are going to leave it there. If you did find this video on decorational tips and how to kind of style and theme your builds, then do hit the thumbs up up and let me know in the comment section below. And if you haven't already, why not subscribe? We've got plenty more content on the way. And if you're wondering what to check out next and watch, why not check out my video on architecture? You can see we've got some interesting builds here that you might find inspiring for your next build. And of course, don't forget the Kickstarter campaign for the fluffy tail hog, the weird whale tick penguin giraffe flea thing, and the build gun. Until next time though, special thanks does go to all of our amazing supporters, most notably our Solarclipse patrons, James Irwin, Firefless and Trebor, as well as our Lunars, the Calamity, Ben, Star, Shoku, the MN Wolf, and that dude AW, as well as our Blood Moon of the day, which today is Papa Snoozy. Until next time, as always, ciao for now.